everyone, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Kerry Siggins, and I'm so glad you are here today. Today, I want to talk about how to do hard things. Yes, you can do hard things. We can all do hard things. And I've said this before in many episodes. The only way to get good at doing hard things is to do hard things. I know that it can be uncomfortable to get out of your comfort zone. But if we don't get out of our comfort zones, then we don't expand our competency zone. And what I mean by that is that by trying new things, by pushing ourselves, we grow. When we get out of our comfort zone, we get better at doing things that make us uncomfortable. Take being a baby, for example. We have to learn how to crawl before we can walk. And it's really scary going from crawling to walking, but that's how we grow. That's how we get out of our comfort zone. We adults are no different, but we have been conditioned to believe that if we look stupid, if we fumble, if we're not good at something, if we might fail, then we shouldn't do it. And that is a huge mistake because it holds you back from growth. It holds you back from building the life you want, from going after your dreams, for dreaming big. This is the one life that we have to live, and we do not want to play small. So that's what I want to talk about today. And the reason why I want to talk about it today is because I am just past 100 days of not drinking. I've brought this up in an episode or two about wanting to quit drinking. Obviously, I had substance abuse issues in my 20s. That was never really related to alcohol. It was to different kinds of drugs. I've always been able to drink and not have a problem with it. But after COVID, it became a daily habit. So I wasn't drinking a lot, but I was drinking almost every day. Come home, pour a glass of wine while I would make dinner, and a glass of wine would turn into 2 glasses of wines, and then it just became a habit. And for a couple of years, I was just like, I really want to break this habit. And I would do a dry January or a dry July and feel great, but then the next thing I would know, I would just fall back into my same patterns. And then one day I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about the book, The Courage to be Disliked: How to Free Yourself, Change Your Life, and Achieve Real Happiness by Ichiro Kamishi, a Japanese author who writes this very philosophical book between a philosopher and a student about the courage to be disliked. And the podcast host was talking about how we humans can do anything that we want to do. We just have to ask ourselves the question, do we really want to do it? So that piqued my interest because I had to ask myself that question. I go through this whole process of, okay, I really want this. I really want this goal. Am I really willing to actually make the changes and do what I need to do to make that goal happen? And in some areas of my life, absolutely. In other areas, it's much harder. So I decided to read this book, The Courage to be Disliked, because ability has always been something that's important to me. It's a deep part of my personality, something that I've really had to work on. So I thought, this sounds like a perfect book for me. And oh my gosh, I loved it. So it is a story between a philosopher and a young man, and they go through this whole concept of how do you live your life for yourself. And it was brilliant. As I got into the book, I could really see myself in so much of it. But what kept coming up was this whole thing of like, I don't want to have my daily drinking habit. And a couple of excerpts from the book really motivated me to just do this. And the two that really stood out are these. First, your unhappiness cannot be blamed on your past or your environment. And it isn't that you lack competence. You just lacked courage. One might say that you are lacking the courage to be happy. And the second one is, no experience in itself is a cause of our success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead we make them out to be whatever suits our purposes. We are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. Your unhappiness cannot be blamed on your past or your environment. It is not that you lack competence. It's just that you lack courage. And as I've looked at my life, I can see these places where I've exhibited so much courage. Leaving Austin, Texas to move to Colorado with no job, a ton of debt, and no friends. That took so much courage to say, I have to change my life. I cannot blame my situation anymore. I cannot blame other people anymore. I have to have the courage to go make myself happy. And so I wanted to share this with you because if you are wanting to make a big change in your life, if there is something that you are unhappy, whether it was like me of like, okay, I want to break my daily glass of wine habit or something else that's motivating you, I wanted to encourage you to think about, I have to have the courage to do this. And that's big. That is getting outside of your comfort zone. But you can't make the changes that you need to make in your life. You can't do those hard things if you are not willing to go deep inside and summon the courage to make the changes that you need to make. So let's unpack the second one. No experience in itself is the cause of our success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, the so-called trauma, but instead we make them out to whatever suits our purposes. So that's basically the stories that we tell ourselves. When we attach meaning to something, that is what makes us either happy or sad. It's what is going to bring us joy or cause us to suffer. We are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them. And that is what is self-determining. So when we say, oh, this happened to me and I am a failure because of it, it simply is because we are attaching that story of failure to it. So how do we turn that around and saying, okay, I didn't achieve the outcome that I wanted, but here's how I am going to grow from this. This is what I learned. This is the new door that it opened. So we are so in control of our mindsets. We are so in control of those narratives that we choose to tell ourselves. And we can tell ourselves a different story about anything that has happened in our life, and we can turn something that is negative into something that is positive. Doesn't mean that a negative experience didn't happen, but we can choose to find the goodness in it, to find the way that we want to grow and learn and how we develop as a human being because of those hardships. I love this because basically the premise of the book is that we are in charge of how we think about everything. And when we decide that we want to do something, we can do it. We just have to have the courage to actually do it. So that brings me back to deciding to quit drinking. So this was super motivating for me to say, okay, this does not make me happy. I want to make this change. I just don't have the courage to do it, to go through the pain of figuring out how to create a new habit, how to go out socially without having a glass of wine, how to just break that kind of crutch that I've had to unwind at the end of the day with a glass of wine. And so I decided that's it. I'm going to do 100 days without drinking. And so I have hit my 100 days and I wanted to share this with you because it has been so incredibly empowering for a couple of reasons. One, just not drinking alcohol for 100 days. It does so many good things to your mind, your body, your brain. I've lost like 10 pounds. I feel fantastic. I'm sleeping better. I am regulating emotions better. It's just so good. And I also am really proud of the fact that I did it. And I thought it was going to be a lot harder than what it was. But once I made up my mind that I was just 100% not going to drink for 100 days, it did not matter what, I was able to do it. And so that just brings a lot of satisfaction and pride that I was able to do something that was hard. And that's why I want to do this podcast, because we can do hard things. So I wanted to share this as an inspiration for you not to quit drinking. You can do whatever you want. I am actually going to quit drinking. I'm going to go for another 100 days and then another 100 days and another 100 days and just see how it all goes, because I do feel so much better not drinking. But that's not the point of this. The point is to inspire you to go after some big goal that you want to achieve, or make some major change in your life that has just seemed too hard to do, too hard to take that step forward, and maybe that you haven't found the courage to actually do. All right, so here is how I approached my 100 days of no drinking. And I think it's a good roadmap for you as you think about doing this hard thing that you want to do in your life. So the first thing is that you have to embrace this kind of growth mindset, this belief that you can develop your abilities, that you can grow, that you can do hard things if you work at it, if you stay dedicated to it. Having a growth mindset is essential for tackling these tough challenges, because you have to embrace this idea that failure and setbacks are not an indication of inadequacy, but opportunities to learn and to grow and to improve. And that each challenge that you face is a chance to improve and expand your capabilities. So that growth mindset is really important. There's a great book out there by Carol Dweck called The Growth Mindset that if you are interested in learning. The other mindset is a fixed mindset, where you believe that everything that you can do today is all that you can ever do. But if you want to do any of this, you've got to have that growth mindset. You've got to believe that you can change. You've got to believe that you can grow. The second thing is that I broke it down. When you're faced with a daunting task, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. The idea of just quitting drinking altogether was 100% overwhelming to me. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it. It came back to that whole thing. We can do anything. We just have to actually decide we want to do it. And so if you're not doing it, you need to ask yourself the question, do I really want this? That was a big wake-up call for me. So I said, okay, I'm going to do 100 days. And the first thing I'm going to do is just focus on the first 30. And then how do I focus on the first 30? Well, I'm going to focus on the first week. And how do I focus on the first week? I'm going to focus on each day at a time and break it down that way. So when you have a daunting task, don't get overwhelmed. Instead, just break it down into smaller, manageable steps. This approach will make the challenge seem less intimidating, but it also allows you to celebrate those small victories along the way. Every time you complete that step and build momentum, you gain confidence and that propels you forward. So for me, I circled the 100 days on a calendar. I bought a little calendar and then I just X'd out each day that I went. And then when I got to the end of 30 days, I wrote down 30 days. Yay, celebrate, have a little win. And then I went, okay, now it's the next 30 days. And I broke it down that way. And each day it got easier, but having that X to show my progress was super motivating. And I wanted to make sure that I had that X. So figure out a way to motivate yourself. How do you break down your big goal into smaller chunks? How do you track your progress? And how do you celebrate how far you have come? Because that's really what we need to look at. Instead of looking at, oh gosh, okay, I just hit 30 days, I have 60 more to go. I celebrated the fact that I hit 30 days. That's awesome. And when I hit the next day, it's going to be 31, and that's awesome. And so my next podcast is going to be on this idea of the gap in the game. I talked about this in the last Advice from a CEO episode, how you want to measure yourself on the progress you've made versus how far you still have left to go. I really did this in this goal by breaking it down and being able to celebrate those small successes. It absolutely helped me stay motivated, and I could be proud of myself for this. So figure out that way to do that for yourself too. The next thing is to visualize success. Visualization is so incredibly powerful, and a lot of people think it's woo-woo, but it's not. When you visualize yourself achieving your goal, it helps you build confidence. So spend a few minutes each day visualizing yourself successfully completing this hard task at hand. And don't just visualize yourself completing it. Visualize yourself having to overcome roadblocks. So each morning when I would do my visualization exercises, I imagined myself coming home, really wanting a glass of wine and saying no, and instead making myself a mocktail. And that really helped. It's not just about visualizing the win, but it's visualizing yourself doing the hard thing, keeping at whatever your goal is. That is a key to visualization to help you. And a lot of people don't talk about that. They just talk about visualize what the end looks like. Well, no, visualize yourself overcoming those obstacles to get to the end so that you are better prepared to be able to push through those obstacles as you run into them, because you're going to, whether that is something that's out of your control or something that's in your control, you're going to have roadblocks along the way. So imagine what those are going to be and visualize that process and those challenges that you're going to face and the satisfaction of overcoming them. And it can really help you reduce anxiety, and it increases your self-assurance, and it primes your mind for success. When we are trying to do hard things, it is all in our minds. We have to be able to figure out how to hack our minds, and visualization is a key way to be able to do that. The fourth thing is to focus on your why. Why are you trying to make this change? Why is this your goal? When you understand the deeper reasons behind why you want something, that can be a really strong motivator. That might be personal growth, that might be family or a long-term dream. When you connect your actions to that meaningful purpose, it provides you the fuel to keep going. So for me, I wanted to break that habit so that I could stop that guilt cycle that I was in, which wasn't helping with anxiety, which wasn't making me feel good. And so I wanted to feel better. So that was a big goal. I also was like, I'd like to lose a little bit of weight. And I know that drinking a glass or two of wine every day does not help me lose any weight. So I want to feel strong and beautiful as I'm going into my 46th year on this planet. I knew that I would feel better. I would show up as a better mom, as a wife, and a leader if I wasn't drinking, and that I would feel better about myself because I wasn't putting poison into my body. So those were my whys, and I suggest that you find yours. When you really want to do something hard or go after a big goal, reflect on why you're doing it, and that will help you keep going, especially when the going gets tough, because it will. And then reflect often on this why. When you do your visualizations, it'll help you overcome when you feel that tug and the pull to fall into your same patterns or to give up because you think it's just too hard. The next thing is to stay consistent. Consistency matters. You've heard me say this many times, but consistency is the most underrated leadership trait on the planet. And when you're trying to make a change in your life and go after a big goal, that proves to be true as well. Consistency is key when you're trying to build that confidence and to increase your motivation. So on days when you don't feel motivated to do the hard things that you need to do to achieve your goal or to make the change, you've got to remember that each small step that you take is actually helping propel you to that goal. And those small steps, they add up one day at a time. Every day I checked off a calendar day with an X. That was one day of no drinking. It's one day out of 100. It'll be one day out of 200 and 300 eventually as I continue down this journey. So that consistency really matters. And consistent effort over time creates that habit to reinforce your ability to tackle those challenges, to tackle that goal, to make those changes. And it'll make it feel less daunting. So just be consistent. A small step every single day really does make a difference. The next thing is to build a support system. You've got to surround yourself with supportive people who can provide the encouragement that you need to keep going. I told several people, I told my husband and my son, I'm going to do 100 days of no drinking. I told my coworkers because we've had lots and lots of activities around here. We had all of our global employees come from around the world to celebrate being part of Stone Age. And I knew that was going to be tough to be going out and to not have a glass of wine with my fellow coworkers, and everybody else was going to be having a beer or a cocktail. So I needed that support system. So I told several of my colleagues, my executive management team, look, I'm doing this 100 days of no drinking, and I really would like your support. And so when you see me not ordering a glass of wine, please don't make a big deal out of it. And they were so incredibly supportive. And this was awesome. I also started listening to this great podcast called Sober Powered by Jillian Teets, I think is how you say her name. I love this podcast, and she provides weekly motivation for anybody who is going through a dry January or 100 days or just trying to stay sober. And so having that motivation was really helpful as she shared her stories and all kinds of information on how to either moderate or stop drinking. And that's how I built my support system. So for you, as you are thinking about this big goal that you are trying to achieve or this major change that you want to make in your life, what does your support system look like? How are you going to lean on people who you trust and who are you're closest to, who will support you in achieving this big goal? What kind of podcasts can you listen to? What kind of books can you read? What and who do you need to surround yourself with so that you can have a support system that will keep encouraging you to push forward even when you're feeling self-doubt? The next thing is to celebrate progress, not perfection. We're going to stumble along the way. And it goes back to this whole gap in the game. How are you measuring yourself? So it's easy to get caught up in striving for perfection. Like, I'm not a perfectionist, so I don't have this issue. Progress is good enough for me. But a lot of you out there do think that you have to be perfect. And if you can't be perfect, it's not worth doing. Well, that's not the case. You just need to make progress. As you're going forward and trying to achieve your goal or making a big change, like, you might have doubts. You might take a step backwards. You might falter. You might quit for a little bit, but that's okay. That's just part of life. It doesn't mean that you have to give up. Celebrate the progress that you've made. If you are striving for perfection, then you're going to be frustrated and it's going to be a demotivator. So focus on that progress, celebrate those small wins, recognize how far you've come. Even if you haven't reached your goal yet, even if you have taken a few steps backward from reaching your goal, that is how we learn. And there's so much to learn in those setbacks if we choose to look at it that way. And finally, practice self-compassion. What I've learned through this 100 days and what I've learned through my entire journey of rebuilding my life and figuring out how to be a leader who is worth following and building a company and making mistakes and going through the uncomfortableness of growing is that the kinder I am to myself, the better my life is. And I really want to encourage you to consider the same thing. There is no point in beating yourself up. It does not help you do anything. All it does is hold you back. We are literally on this planet to grow, to learn new things, to expand our consciousness. And that happens from making progress. And it also happens from taking a step backwards and from failure. That is how we learned. If you want to do hard things, but practice that self-compassion. It's okay to feel uncertain. It's okay to struggle at times. That is literally part of the process. But when you maintain that healthy mindset of like, okay, you know what? I'm going to give myself some grace here. This wasn't perfect. I could have done this better. I quit for a little bit, but I'm going to pick back up and get back on the wagon and do this again. It allows you to bounce back. And ideally, not just bounce back, but to bounce forward. And that is how we build resilience. So that self-criticism, it's not helping you. And I understand it's really tough to kick. Every time you hear yourself putting yourself down, say, stop. I'm going to say something really positive about myself instead. That's how you practice self-compassion. So those are my tips on how to do hard things. And hopefully you could see yourself in this podcast as you are thinking about some major change or goal that you want to go after in your life, and hopefully inspired you to motivate yourself and to build the confidence that you need to be able to do this hard thing. And remember that this is a journey. It's not a one-time effort, right? Our whole lives are a journey, and it's like this. It ebbs and it flows. And the best way to do this is to think of it as a process. So I'll repeat again just to summarize this for you. 1, embrace a growth mindset. 2, break down your goal. 3, visualize success. And not just success, but overcoming the challenges that you're going to face as you are pursuing your goal or making this change. 4, focus on your why. Why are you doing this? 5, stay consistent. Consistency is key. Little tiny progress equals big progress if you do it every day. 6, build that support system. Make sure that you surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you along the way. 7, celebrate progress. Don't worry about perfection. Perfection is a fallacy. And 8, practice self-compassion. You can make these changes in your life. You can achieve that big goal. Using these strategies, you will find that you are capable of achieving more than you ever thought possible. All right, that's it for today's podcast. Hopefully you found some good takeaways in there, some nuggets, some inspiration for you to go do the hard things that you want to do in your life as well. So with that, I will leave you for your day. If you like this podcast, please share it with a friend, write a review, subscribe to it on YouTube. It helps get the message out and helps with the algorithms, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.